Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Valero Texas Open Data Dive Show. We've got a lot to get into. It's going to be a fun show as we slice and dice all the data that we can, getting prepared for the Valero Texas Open. So let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It's an amazing resource. I say it every show, but if you aren't a member, you seriously need to go check them out. It is well worth your investment. It's going to make you a much better outright wager gambler, much better DFS player. Seriously, it's the best tool out there. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description of the YouTube video and to Twitch, there are links to my social media where I post my betting cards and any interesting research that I find throughout the week leading up to the tournament. And there is also an email in the descriptions that allow you to get in contact with me if you want to be a part of bonus content, things such as bonus videos, and my tournament fact sheet that I put out every Wednesday, labeling my best wagers, my best bets, top pivots and fades, and all that for DFS and such. So if you want to be a part of that content, make sure you reach out to the email in the descriptions of YouTube and Twitch. And finally, we are live. Chat is open for both YouTube and Twitch. I want to hear about your week leading up to the Valero Texas Open. Do you have any outright wagers already in? What are some early leans or fades for the Valero DFS? So we're here for all of that. And if you want to make a little bit of banter for March Madness, that'll do as well. And as always, if you're just wanting to jump in chat, make fun of me, that's well warranted as always. So let's not delay it any further. Let's dig into the data for the 2022 Valero. And we transition over here to Fantasy National. And I have already preset it to the 2022 season, the last 36 rounds, as I've been digging around today, doing my own research. The Corrales is in the Fantasy National database, so we'll have as much of a full picture view as we can get, since we don't get the stats for the match play. So let me make sure I have chat up and running. And again, please jump in, especially the newcomers to Twitch. Welcome. I have mainly broadcast or been live on YouTube, and now starting to dual stream. So if you're catching via Twitch, welcome. Please jump in chat. Would love the interaction there as well. So when we looked last night in the initial research show, we noticed in the GCSAA tournament fact sheet that we are on pretty much average speed Bermuda greens. It is a long course here at TPC San Antonio. It's about 7,436 yards or so. It's a little over 7,400, and by Fantasy National terms, that is defined as a long course. So we're definitely going to be looking into a lot of those metrics. We're going to be looking into putting on Bermuda. This is a Greg Norman design, so not a lot to do with architect here in Fantasy National. So we've got a lot to get into. Plus, there have been some field updates, so I've made sure to update the prior performance spreadsheet that I kind of ended the show with last night. Made sure I took out the players that had withdrawn, added the players that have been added to the field and whatnot. Off the top of my head, I believe Peter Uline has now gotten into the field. Cameron Percy has dropped out. And then the Monday qualifiers, Aaron Baddeley, who's had a lot of previous course success here at TPC San Antonio, Sam Saunders, Sean Stephanie, and there's one other, and I Jake something. I would butcher his last name, so don't want to go there. But there are 4 Monday qualifiers. So we're here for all of that, and I made sure to update the prior performance at TPC San Antonio, updated that spreadsheet, and there's going to be an update to the comparison course spreadsheet that I'm kind of, minor revealing tonight, I guess. And then in the comments, I really want to know, do you all want me to do a live show explaining the new differences to the comparison course spreadsheet that I have been using periodically throughout this year? I've made a lot of changes to that. So leave a comment, like the video if you want to see a live stream or video on YouTube about those changes. But enough of that. We're going to kind of review a few things that we talked about last night, and then really get into, as they say, the meat and potatoes of the data. But one of the first things we always do after we look at the course breakdown and the GCSAA tournament fact sheet, we are on Bermuda greens. So going to go ahead and add that filter. And I don't have it up, but let me bring up the past course conditions. And we aren't going to be using any speed filter on these Bermuda greens. Last year they played Velcro to Velcro speed, but they also have been average, and they've been average majority of the time. So it would be safe to put average Bermuda speed greens, but because they have played Velcro, I'm not going to use any speed filters. We definitely know, or at least I get a very, very good sense that they're not going to be fast or lightning. But I still don't feel comfortable doing Velcro or average speed. So just do a quick review here of the top performers on Bermuda greens since the start of the 2022 PGA Tour season. Those players are Martin Traynor, Adam Long, Adam Hadwin, Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Chesson Hadley, Nick Watney, Scott Stallings, Vincent Whaley, and Robert Streb. So a lot of the people you would probably think of: Adam Hadwin, very good putter; Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Chesson Hadley, Vincent Whaley had a really darn good Corrales. Kind of fell off on Sunday, but does not. This result is not indicative of how well he played. Vincent Whaley, always a good putter, especially on Bermuda. So your normal, what you would expect of these players in the field, especially on Bermuda greens. One other aspect that we looked at last night was long courses. So I'm going to go ahead and add the long course filter, and because there are only 11 rounds in the 2022 tour season, I was going to remove that. Apparently we're just going to add 2021. What I am meaning to do is remove that filter, and I'm going to bring it back to the last 12 months. And last night we saw that it stretched back all the way to last year's Valero. So pretty convenient. Now in the mixed condition model Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, I'm not going to go back this far. That is what the past performance spreadsheet is for. More so trying to dive into specifically the Valero. So I'll definitely cut it off at, say April the 7th, since the Masters is the week after. I'll probably cut it off there and then move forward on long courses. But anyway, just for a good overall view here, in the past calendar year, your top performers on long courses: Gary Woodland, Chad Ramey, especially buoyed by his win last week at the Corrales. So Gary Woodland, Chad Ramey, Chris Kirk all tied for first. Luke List, Jordan Spieth, Hideki, Rory, Johnny Vegas, Corey Connors, and Charlie Hoffman. A lot of the probably names that you would expect. Johnny Vegas, Corey Connors, majors, Rory, Matsuyama, Spieth, List. Ramey, as I mentioned, buoyed by the performance at the Corrales. So no real surprise here. Matt Wallace, 11th. His one trip to TPC San Antonio, he finished 3rd. Gary Woodland has played here once. He finished 6th. So a lot of the prior performers that played well at TPC San Antonio really perform on long courses in general. So definitely something that we are going to want to look at tonight. I'm going to remove the long course filter. I think the only other, two other things that I really kind of want to look at. Strokes gained approach. It is just my preferred statistic. I believe it is the statistic that is most indicative of long-term success, future success. So I am going to bring back the 2022 filter, or the 2022 PGA Tour season filter. Your top 10 strokes gained approach players since the start of the tour season. Russell Knox, Hideki, Luke Donald, Luke List, Mito Pereira, Martin Laird, Adam Hadwin, Austin Smotherman, Matthew Neesmith, and Patton Kizzire. So we've seen Hadwin pop on the approach and putting, which is a little surprising. He's a very good putter, everybody knows that, but to see the irons kind of, I don't want to say spiking, but vastly improving, especially over the past 5 events. He had a poor Genesis, to be fair, but other than that, the Valspar, he gained 3.5. The Players, he gained over 4. 3.5 at Pebble, 3.7 at Phoenix. So the past 5 events, his irons have been very, very hot. And if he keeps that going with the track record of his, I don't want to say elite putting, but very, very good putting, a win for Adam Hadwin might not be too far around the corner, especially coming in with very good form, 2 top 10s. There's a lot to like with Adam Hadwin, at least at a baseline level. So good stuff there. And the other kind of what I call umbrella stat off the tee approach around the green putting. The other umbrella stat that we kind of saw last night that plays very, very importantly here at TPC San Antonio is off the tee. And even though off the tee is such a big factor, and I'll demonstrate that here in the course breakdown that we looked through last night in a lot of detail. But it doesn't look like there's much of off the tee importance in finishers in the top 10. But as you move your way up the leaderboard, it really starts to gain some traction. And when you get to the winners, it's almost, a full stroke. It's 85 hundredths of a stroke. So very, very important as you move up the leaderboard. So I'm going to reset this to the top 10s in case we want to come back to it. But definitely want to look at off the tee. And speaking to off the tee, driving distance isn't that big of a deal here, even though the course is long. Distance really isn't the thing. So it's more, and it's not necessarily the fairways either. It's more of a good drives gained and greens in regulation type course that really lends to success here. So definitely want to look at off the tee, but we're going to scrutinize greens in regulation, good drives, and so on. But strokes gained off the tee since the beginning of the 2022 PGA Tour season. Your leaders are Brendan Steele, Luke List, Corey Connors, Hayden Buckley, who had a very good Sunday at Corrales, Rory, Keegan Bradley, Johnny Vegas, Siwoo, Trey Mullinax, and Ryan Palmer. I do believe Taylor Pendrith has withdrawn. Might want to double check me on that, but I believe he was one of the withdrawals earlier in the week. So good stuff there. We've seen Luke List second and third, second and off the tee, third and approach. Keegan 6th and 11th. Corey Connors 3rd and 17th. Let's see, Austin Smotherman 16th and off the tee, 7th and approach. Russell Knox 17th and off the tee, 1st and approach. So a lot of players here that tend to seem to be rising to the top of the considered metrics already. And I believe that is all I'm going to want to do as far as an overview, kind of look back at last night's show, or review, if you will. Let's see if there's anything else that we might want to perhaps take a look at. Not really. We've looked at Bermuda greens, putting on that surface. We've looked at long courses. I guess a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm going to add the moderate and windy filters. We'll take a look at Windfinder before we move to Excel. And I have a tendency to forget, so please jump in chat and remind me to look at Windfinder before we move on to the Excel portion of the show. But this is a bit of foreshadowing. I mentioned last night that the wind didn't appear to be all that much of a factor. Well, 24 hours later, I'm adding the filters, so that'll tell you what you need to know about that. But to get a decent idea, these are your top performers in the 2022 PGA Tour season in moderate and windy conditions. Those players are Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely, Luke List, Lonto Griffin, Siwoo Kim, CH3, Charles Howell, Camilo Villegas, Brendan Todd, Martin Laird, and Hudson Swafford. Johnny Vegas just outside the top 10 there, who's popped a lot. Adam Hadwin has popped quite a bit already, sitting 13th. No one else that we've really talked about a lot. So those are the top performers in moderate and windy conditions. Now I do believe we are done looking at a kind of an overview or umbrella stat level of detail. Let's take a look at birdies and bogeys. And I mentioned last night that I was leaning towards birdies. Let's go on into some historical years past here at TBC San Antonio and see if we can glean more information than we gathered just last night in the 2021 season. Re-emphasize here. Now, while the graph on the course breakdown valued approach so much more than off the tee, you can see here all these numbers. They're just the sheer amount of numbers here. I mean, 7.5, 9.5, 8, 6.5. That is why strokes gained approach is such a dominant statistic here. But I also want you to notice of the top 22 last year, and I'm cutting it off at 22 just conveniently of ties. So the top 22 players, only one was negative and off the tee last year. And we're going to see that be a trend. So 2019, strokes gained. Again, off the tee, it's conveniently, again, the top 22. You have one player that's negative, and only one player that's negative in the strokes gained approach. But again, just the sheer size of the numbers in this strokes gained approach, 11.5, 6, 5, 5.5, 5, 8.5, 7.5. Like, that is why approach is so much more, graphically stand out. But don't overlook the importance of off the tee. And then I'll just go back to 2018 just to really hammer the point in. Now, you did have a few more negatives in off the tee, but still, minus 1.1, 1.2. Let's see. We'll do the top 19. Don't want to go down all the way to the 26th or whatever it is. So of the top 19 players, 3 were in the negative and off the tee, but you still had quite a bit of high success here. 4, 3, 3.5, 3.5. It's just the approach was so much more important. But coming back to 2021, and we talked about last night birdies versus bogeys. I was leaning towards birdies being more important, but we're going to definitely look at previous years here. So here's 2021, and while the birdies certainly have higher numbers, the 10.5, the 8.5, 6.5, 5.5, 6.5, and the more players in the positive. Only one of the top 22 was negative in birdies gained. The bogeys weren't necessarily a throwaway factor though either. You can see here in the top 22 players, only 4 were negative, and it was Luke List at -1.5 that was the biggest culprit. All these others are minus a half, which is it's not close to field average, but it's not a disaster. So let's see if we can glean any more information here. Here's 2019 birdies and bogeys. Here, it still looks like it's birdies, but again, in the top 22, your top, 16 performers were all positive in both. Then you had a slight negative from Ricky in the bogeys, and then 3 negatives in the birdies. So again, it looks like they're roughly the same in terms of importance by the number of players that fall or that are positive in both, but the sheer amount in the birdies gained: 14 from Corey Connors, 7 from Streelman, 5, 4, 5. Whereas the highest in the bogeys looks like 5.8, so almost 6. Yeah, I mean, it's not that they're not important. It's just the birdies are so much higher valued, it looks like. And then finally, we'll look at 2018. Again, more players positive in the birdies, but you do have some pretty high numbers here in the bogeys. Landry, 8. Ryan Moore, 8. You got a 6 from Sean O'Hare, 6 from Brent Snedeker. But you also have some high birdies. So I'm leaning still towards birdies gained being more important than bogeys avoided. But bogeys avoided sure looks like a really strong statistic as well. So because of that, let's come back to the field from Fantasy National, and let's look at birdies gained. And instead of just looking at just a flat out birdies gained, I'm going to remove this filter. We're going to look at birdies gained on long courses, because that's something that we definitely know this course is going to play long. In the last 12 months, your top birdies gained players on long courses: Chad Ramey, Jordan Spieth, Andrew Novak, Chris Kirk, Robert McIntyre, Charlie Hoffman, Jim Herman, Gary Woodland, Luke List, and Johnny Vegas. So you see some of these same guys kind of popping up over and again. Charlie Hoffman has played this event extremely well. The most strokes gained total in the past 4 years here. Chris Kirk has played this event very well. Chad Ramey, again, off the Corrales. Woodland has played this event well. Luke List loves long courses. Johnny Vegas loves long courses. So a lot of these same players here. By the same token, if we want to look at bogeys avoided, and I'm not going to resort this, but of the players that are top 10 in birdies gained, who are also top 10 in bogeys avoided, remember, on long courses, those players are Jordan Spieth, so second in birdies, first in bogeys on long courses. You have Gary Woodland, 8th and 5th. So those are the only 2 players that are top 10 in both gaining birdies and avoiding bogeys on long courses. Let's see. Do I want to add anything else or look at anything else? Birdies are better. See, I don't feel like birdies are better is the statistic to look at this week, because eagles are just so rare here that you're just going to want to look at birdies, I think. You could take a look at opportunities gained, but I'm still leaning towards birdies. So for those who want to put value in the opportunities gained, your top opportunities gained players on long courses in the past calendar year: Chris Kirk, Patton Kizzire, Henrik Stenson, Austin Smotherman, JT Poston, Camille Villegas, Kevin Chappell, Kyle Stanley, Russell Knox, and Hayden Buckley. Again, I don't know if I'm going to put a lot of weight into opportunities gained. I think I'm going to be doing birdies gained, possibly some bogeys avoided. But in case you wanted to take a look at opportunities gained on long courses, there you go. I think that's going to be it for this tab. I'm going to remove the long course filter. Let's move to fairways and greens. And I mentioned that I think it's going to be good drives gained and greens and regulation gained. So let me add the 2022 season filter. I'm going to bring it in obviously to the last 6 months. Let's see. Before we start sorting and all that stuff, let's look at fairways and greens from last year. It looks like here that driving distance might be somewhat important, at least in terms of upper tier success, but when you sort by it, not really. Will Gordon, clunker of a made cut. Cameron Davis, another clunker of a made cut. Samuel No, a middling to clunker finish. Now you do have some high leaderboard success. Brandon Hagee, top 20. Gary Woodland, top 10. Hoffman was your runner-up. Wallace, third. But it's not a strong or extremely strong correlation. Good drives gained here. Lucas Glover, top 5. Chris Kirk, top 10. Middling from Matthew Neesmith, your runner-up. 2 more middlings, top 10, top 15. So good drives gained appears a lot more important than driving distance. And to the same extent, greens, more of the same. Your top 10, middling from Aaron Wise, top 5, top 5, middling, top 10, top 5, middling, top 15, runner-up, 15, 25. So with that said, it looked like greens was a little bit more important last year than good drives, but we're definitely going to scrutinize that. So we'll look at 2019 fairways and greens. Let's see here. I'll highlight the top 22 again from ties. I think you all can see that, yeah. So greens and regulation, you only had 2 negative in 2019. Now, Zach Fisher was terrible at greens and regulation, so take that for what it's worth. There's only 2 negative in good drives gained, and those numbers are quite a bit lower or closer to field average. Danny Lee, minus 1.1. Again, Fisher, minus 1.1. You certainly have a lot of high numbers in the greens. I mean, Corey Connors, 13.5. Streelman, 8.5. Brian Moore, 9.5. 10.5, 9.5. Did you have some decent numbers in the good drives gained too? 11, 6, 10, 6, 9, 8. So it looks like, at least to me, in those 2 years, and we'll check 2018 as well, that these two are very, very comparable in terms of importance. This might be a bit of a tiebreaker. Looks like greens and regulation were a lot more important in 2018 than good drives gained. Yeah, so let's look at the top 18. Yeah, you have a minus 3.5 here. That's really the only terrible performance in terms of good drives gained, but you do have 4 players in the top 18 lose strokes, good drives gained, whereas greens you only had 2 players. So if anything, I think greens is going to slightly outweigh good drives gained. They both seem fairly important. Let's take a look at greens and regulation. And again, I think I'm just going to go with long courses. We know this is a long course. I don't think I'm going to put a long course filter on every single metric, but I think it's pretty apropos for looking at this specific metric, greens and regulation. So your top 10 green and regulation gained players in the past calendar year on long courses: Corey Connors, Alex Smalley, Hank Biota, Ryan Palmer, Chris Kirk, Justin Lauer, Hideki Matsuyama, Johnny Vegas, Russell Knox, Rory, and Abraham Ancer. So a lot of these same names: Chris Kirk, Corey Connors, Hideki, Johnny Vegas, Russell Knox. Rory's been up there a couple times. And if you want to look at good drives gained, I'm not going to resort that, but your players that are top 10 in both good drives and greens in regulation gained. So you got Corey Connors, first and first. I'm not a mathematician, but I don't think you're going to be able to beat that. Might be wrong, but I don't think you're going to beat that. Alex Smalley, sixth in good drives, second in greens. Biota, second in good drives, third in greens. You've got Kirk, seventh and fifth. Russell Knox, fourth and ninth. Abraham Ancer, third and 10th. I'll give a slight honorable mention to Justin Lauer, 14th in good drives, 5th in greens. So good stuff there. Again, I think I'm going to value greens more, but there is certainly an argument for good drives gained, considering good drives gained is basically the combination of fairways and greens, in the sense that Fantasy National defines a good drive as the player has either hit the fairway or they hit the green/fringe in regulation still. So if they don't find the fairway, they're still able to hit the green or fringe in regulation. So good drives is a statistic that I tend to really look at, although not use in my final mixed condition models, just because I value approach players, and generally I'll just put strokes gained approach as opposed to good drives gained. But with off the tee being so important, maybe it is good drives gained this week. Be interested to hear what you all think. Put it in the comments. But that is a look at the fairways and greens tab in Fantasy National. I'm going to go ahead and move on to proximity. If you didn't watch last night's show, I would ask that you go watch it, but also would recommend it specifically as we're talking about proximity. With my background in data analytics and whatnot, I am pretty transparent a bit. I always have been in regards to proximity, that it is the metric that I'm least confident in when evaluating golf wagering, fantasy golf, and whatnot. Just due to my, my understanding, my reasoning when dissecting data, some things would say that proximity should play very important and then doesn't, and vice versa. So proximity is kind of a statistic that I'm still not very comfortable with. And again, that's just full disclosure, full transparency. But I still try to look at it. We saw in the course breakdown that approach shot distribution, there really isn't a dominant approach range here at TBC San Antonio. I mean, the most common is 150 to 175, but it's only 0.2% more than the average tour event. The more common approach shots in relation to the average tour event are wedges, 7,500, 100 to 125. But again, a lot of times the data just doesn't back up that graph in terms of importance. Like, it doesn't lead to a lot of high leaderboard success. So what I am getting at here, let's take a look at proximity from the past calendar year on long courses. So your top proximity total, no specific range, just your total proximity top performers in the past calendar year on long courses. You've got Corey Connors, Russell Knox, Hank Biota, Brian Stewart, Taylor Moore, Abraham Ancer, Kyle Stanley, Austin Smotherman, Brendan Steele, and Doug Gim. So the reason I think it's going to be a total proximity, and we'll definitely see it in the Excel portion of the show, I've alluded to it a couple times, I just don't see a specific range that really warrants a lot of scrutiny, especially in a finalized mixed condition model. But total proximity seems to be pretty darn important here, at least in relation to other courses and proximity to the importance of proximity on those courses. I think is the best way to say that. So there's a look at your total proximity players this week at the Valero. And the reason I was going at that, I kind of jumped ahead here, but if you look at last year's proximity, you have some decent correlation here. Now, Kevin Stadler, clunker of a finish, Doug Gims, middling, but a top 5 here, 2 top 10s, 2 top 15s, top 25, top 30, top 15. That's a decently strong correlation if you sort by just the leaderboard. Again, your top 22 players, technically 5. Those are really, really bad in proximity. 2 of your top 16 were negative, and 1 was very, very minimally negative, basically field average. But you can see here, I mean, there's not really a range that stands out. I mean, you might say the 175 to 200, and these are, some cut makers. Not necessarily anything, the strongest of correlations. 200 plus, there's a lot of green in here. Again, you have Tane Lee, clunker of a made cut, Stadler, Straka, clunkers. So I just see it as total proximity. I mean, this is the strongest of the correlations between this 175, 200, and 200 plus. And that was just an eyeball view. I mean, there's a lot of red up at the top here, and 125 to 150, 150 to 175, 75 to 100. Yeah, I mean, your winner was the top in that range. You had a clunker, middling, top 5, middling, 2 top 10s. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a terribly strong correlation when you're coming down into the specific ranges. The proximity total does look pretty high in correlation. So again, jump in the comments. What do you think? We'll go to 2019 proximity. Let's see. So we'll see here, like 200 plus did not factor at all in 2019. 175, 200, not really. See, now it's these 2 years that maybe, or these two ranges that might look like they'd be the most important that year. But again, like total proximity here, you've got top 5, your winner, top 10, middling, clunker. But then if you can get past that, top 10, top 15, top 20, clunker, top 20, I just don't know. This is why I am not the most comfortable with proximity. Especially when there's no clear, like the Arnold Palmer, it seems like 25 to 30% of the approach shots come from 200 plus. It's a pretty easy focal point that you'll need to look at that week. Same with, say, the Farmers. But when you don't have a clear standout, I don't know. So we're going to move on into par 3s. Definitely going to take off the long course filter here. Bring this into a more narrowed view, just the 2022 PGA Tour season, last 6 months. Taking a look at chat, make sure we're still going on Twitch and YouTube. Looks like we are. Let's see. Par 3s. And before we start digging in there, P, I'm going to have to double back and catch the replay. Thanks for the content. Absolutely, P. No, thanks for jumping in the chat. I'm thankful that you're just able and willing to watch whenever you can. So I appreciate the support. Hope your Monday is going well. A lot of good stuff that we're covering, trying to prep for our lineups and our wagers. So let's see. We're looking at par threes, and we noticed, at least in 2021, that if there was a range of par threes, it might have been the 175 to 200. But I gave the caution that only one hole on the scorecard measures to this length. So it's either the focal point of that one hole. Now, yes, I'm sure the par threes in this range, which are two of them, sometimes will be moved into here. But I am very hesitant when only one hole on a scorecard measures to a certain range, and that one being the most important. Generally just doesn't give me good vibes. But we saw in 2021 this was going to be the most, or at least it was the most important in terms of par threes. And then, just par threes in total was pretty strong. Let's take a look at 2019, see if there is any more of a breakout or any more standout. And again, look here, 175 to 200 seems to be a very dominant length of importance here at TPC San Antonio. I mean, you got to come down to Zach Fisher, who tied for 14th, before you get even negative at that range of par 3, or length of par 3, I should say. And in the top 22 from 2019, you only had 2 players that were negative from 175 to 200 yards, par 3s. So that looks to be a very important range of par 3, or length of par 3. I keep saying range. A very important length of par 3. And then just strokes gained par 3 as well. You have Austin Cook, who missed the cut, but you have Brian Stewart, top 5, your winner, your top 20, miscut from Austin Cook. Top 5, top 10, top 10, top 20, middling, clunker, probably 2 miscuts, but then even more high success. So if there's a range, it would be the 175 to 200. I think it's probably, honestly, mostly par 3s, just strokes gained total par 3. But we'll take a look at both. Actually, it's only been 2 years. Let's look at 2018. Maybe there's an outlier here or a standout. It looked like the par 3s weren't terribly important at all in 2018, at least in terms of how they have been in the previous 2 years. Now, Andrew Landry led. I would imagine he led, yeah. So strokes gained par 3, your winner, middling, miscut, top 5, middling, clunker. So yeah, I mean, strokes gained par 3 in 2018 really wasn't that big of a factor. When you look at 175 to 200, no factor at all. KJ Choi was middling, and then you had 4 straight miscuts. So 2018 definitely didn't help clarify anything. It muddled it any more than it helped. Let's just take a cursory look at 2017, see if that helps any at all. Looks like more just strokes gained par 3. That was just a cursory look. So, of the players in the field, and again, I do not have any other filters, no long course, no wind, nothing else. Of the players in the field this week, since the start of the 2022 PGA Tour season, your top performers on par 3s, all par 3s: Brian Stewart, Adam Hadwin, Dylan Wu, Tyler Duncan, David Lipsky, Luke Donald, Denny McCarthy, Justin Lauer, Hideki, and Scott Stallings. So some more of these names starting to overlap. I mean, Hadwin seemingly been there on every filter. Let's see, McCarthy, anytime putting's involved, but he's been up there a few times. Justin Lauer's now been up there a few times. Hideki. And then of the range of par 3s, 175 to 200, your top performers of the length of par 3s from 175 to 200 yards in the 2022 PGA Tour season: Matt Wallace, Adam Svensson, Lucas Glover, Russell Knox, Carlos Ortiz, Ryan Brian Stewart, Taylor Moore, Nate Lashley, Rory, and Luke List. So a quick look here. There is only one player who is top 10 in both strokes gained par 3 and strokes gained par 3, 175 to 200. That's Brian Stewart. He's first in par 3s overall, 7th of the length of par 3s. I will give a honorable mention to Dylan Wu, second total in par 3s, 14th in the length. So good stuff there for the par 3s. While this moves to the par 4s, let's move over to historical leaderboards. Last night we saw that just strokes gained par 4, how important it was last year, and then kind of narrowed it down to the 450 to 500 if there was a range, but I was very confident, and you can see it just in the numbers here. 11.5 from Jordan Spieth, 10.5 from Gary Woodland, 9.5 from Charlie Hoffman, 9.5 from Keith Mitchell. I mean, there's just so many. Stroke gained par 4 is just so important. So that was 2021. Let's look at 2019. Par 4 efficiency. We've got more of the same. Well, look at this. So strokes gained par 4. You have to come down all the way to 30th. So your top 29 players. I know you won't be able to see all of those, but tied for 30th here, Matt Jones. Every single person above him, so every player from 1st to 29th, positive in strokes gained par 4. Just total strokes gained par 4. That's a slap in the face. That's Will Smith slap in the face. This is important. And I mean, just look at when you sort by strokes gained par 4, top 10 winner, top 30, so middling, top 30 to middling, top 5, top 10, middling from Sam Saunders, runner up, top 5, top 10, top 10, top 15, top 20. I mean, wow. Yeah. So if I sort again just by the leaderboard, now here in 2019, it looks like the 400 to 450 was more important than the 450 to 500. And you can see that here, 400 to 450, Kevin Streelman, Ryan Moore. So top 10, top 5, winner, runner up, top 15, middling, then a clunker, top 10, top 10. So, I mean, some pretty strong correlation here in the 450 to 500, to be fair. So, I mean, this is just so very important. Strokes gained par 4, just total. And we'll look at 2018, see if it really drives home. Yeah. So you see two negatives here fairly high in the leaderboard. It's negative 0.9. Just compare that to some of these numbers here at the top. 9, 8, 10, 12, 9, 11, 9. This negative 0.9, we'll say negative 1. Not the greatest. I mean, it's under field average, but if some guys are gaining 12, like, I don't know. These are much more closer to field average than even what they seem. And then, of the length of par 5, this year it was 450 to 500. So I tend to think it's just strokes gained par 4 here at TPC San Antonio, just for everything that we have seen in the previous 3 leaderboards. So with that, your top performers on all par 4s since the start of the 2022 season: Corey Connors, Mito Pereira, Luke List, Adam Long, Davis Riley, Matthias Schwab, Hideki, Keegan Bradley, Denny McCarthy, Brian Stewart are your top 10. So more names, more of the same names. Corey Connors, Hideki, Keegan has popped a few times. Denny McCarthy has now popped quite a few times. Johnny Vegas, I see him out of the peripheral. He's 12th in par 4s. Russell Knox is 14th in par 4s. Some notable mentions here for the 400 to 450 and 450 to 500. Corey Connors, 7th and 6th. 7th in 400 to 450. 6th in 450 to 500. Mito Pereira, 2nd and 2nd. Let's see. Yeah, that's really, those are the 2 players that are excelling at both of the ranges. I mean, you've got Davis Riley, 14th and 11th. Schwab, 11th and 21st. So, I mean, they're not bad. I mean, they're very good, but they're not elite like Connors and Mito are at both 400 to 450 and 450 to 500. So good stuff there. And the last thing we're going to cover in Fantasy National before we go on to Microsoft Excel is par fives. So I'll go ahead and sort there, but we'll take a look at previous leaderboards. Par 5, we saw last year just how important the strokes gained par 5 are. We saw it in the course breakdown last night, how it is just the most important strokes gained by hole by par. Highest here among the top 10s. Top 5s starts gaining even more, and then the winners, it just catapults. I mean, it just vaults up over 3/10. So very important. These are your best birdie chances. So let's go back to the leaderboards, excuse me. So while I didn't initially see a strong correlation among the two lengths of par 5s here, when we sorted it last night, it was very strong from the 550 to 600. So winner, top 5, middling, top 5, top 10, top 10, top 10, top 15, top 25, top 30. So very, very strong, at least in 2021, from the 550 to 600. So let's go back a couple years. 2019, par 5 efficiency. Again, it doesn't look very, very strong when you're sorted on leaderboard. It's a lot less in 2019 for sure. That length, 550 to 600, a lot less important that year. Par 5s in totality, middling, top 30, runner up, top 15, miscut, top 10. Not very strong, to be fair. Not very strong. Let's see if 2018, maybe 2019 was an outlier. Let's look at 2018. Par 5s. You can see here a little bit more importance. Now, Jimmy Walker was absolute dog shit at the length of the par 5s, 550 to 600. It was just slightly negative in total par 5s. If you sort by par 5s, this is really damn strong. Top 20, runner up, top 10, top 15, top 20, top 15, top 30, top 15, top 20. Yeah. So very, very, very strong. In fact, strokes gained par 5, I just haven't seen it out of the corner of my eye. You've got to come down to what is this? This is roughly 25, maybe 28th in Peter Uline before you get a miscut in strokes gained par 5. That's very, very, very strong there. And then 550 to 600, yeah, more of the same. Certainly not as strong as the total par 5s, but certainly, a lot of correlation here. Top 20, runner up, middling from Kevin Tway, top 5, top 20, runner up, top 15, top 30, top 20. Yeah. So, of anything, I'm seeing strokes gained par 5, just total, being the most important, and then maybe 550 to 600. So, your top performers on par 5s since the start of the 2022 PGA Tour season: Sahith Theegala, Gary Woodland, Rory, Sam Ryder, Aaron Rai, Maverick McNeely, Luke List, Hideki, Danny Lee, and Seth Reeves. Okay? And then if you want to combine that with the 550 to 600, the players that are top 10 in both strokes gained par 5 and 550 to 600, you have Rory, second in total par 5s, 8th in the length 550 to 600s. You got Sam Ryder, 4th and 2nd. Aaron Rai, 4th and 8th. Hideki, 8th and 4th. Danny Lee, 8th and 6th. I'll give a very high honorable mention to Doug Gim, 11th in total, 10th of the length. Some more honorable mention here: Martin Laird, 14th in total par 5s, 1st in the length of the par 5s. Cameron Champ, 14th and 7th. Kirk Mullinex, 17th in top 5. So, all right, good stuff there. That's going to do it for the Fantasy National portion. I'm going to bring that back out to there just in case we want to come back. I did remember, so before we move to Microsoft Excel, here is Win Finder, and we're definitely going to update this, look at it Wednesday night in the DFS Tactics show. I'll go ahead and refresh it for you all. Now, tonight looks like they're getting quite a bit of wind. Tomorrow looks like they're going to be pounded with a lot of wind. Wednesday looks like a little bit of rain in the morning. So this is what I saw basically Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when I looked at this yesterday afternoon. Very calm. And that hasn't changed for Thursday. Now, Friday, on the other hand, looks like the wind is going to pick up and very gusty. When you have sustained at 10, gust to 17, sustained at 14 or 15, gust to 22, that can really play havoc on a player, especially if they catch a gust. We saw that at the Players. And then Saturday looks really calm. Sunday is pretty steady, consistent, moderate wind. So again, being 3 days out or so, you don't want to put a whole lot of stock into it. But I did want to show you at least strokes gained total in the wind in case this Wednesday gets pushed back into Thursday or picks up or whatnot. So let me switch on over to Microsoft Excel. Transition to that. Bring up chat. And we looked at this last night. I went ahead and updated some of the players. I mentioned how Aaron Baddeley was a Monday qualifier. He's 3 for 3 here at TBC San Antonio since 2017 with an average finish of 17th. He has played this event extremely well. I did all that. We're going to definitely sort some of these statistics and whatnot. But first, I want to bring up my kind of comparison course spreadsheet. And this is going to look different for those who have watched, from the YouTube only days, I guess I should say, who have followed me for quite a while. This has been updated. So again, give me a like on the video or leave a comment if you want to see my kind of updated explanation of the comparison course spreadsheet that I have made. Essentially here, the higher the number, the better, whereas previously it was the lower the number, the better. But anyway, the higher the number, the more important it is in terms of success or high leaderboard success. So strokes gained approach 2.63, putting 2.27 makes a whole lot of sense. Now it doesn't look like off the tee is much more important than around the green, but I want you to see like this 1.69 is a pretty big outlier, whereas off the tee has been really darn consistent. So that really wants me to value off the tee. Driving distance looks like it's a 5. It looks like it's more than these, but I want you to take a notice at, for example, the Masters, 12.82. Heritage, a course that is defined by being a club down course, a forced layup course. Its distance matters more than the Valero. We go back into Corrales, more distance, Valspar, the Players. Puerto Rico is more than triple in importance of driving distance more than triple in importance of driving distance than the Valero. So driving distance, not a factor here at all. Sorry, scrolled too far. Greens, really darn important. Again, good drives gained. So those two are pretty darn common, or pretty close to each other. We talked about birdies and bogeys, very, very close to each other in importance. Birdies slightly more, which is what we were seeing. Par threes, it looks like it's total par three. We were hinting at the 175 to 200 to perhaps being the strongest of the lengths but it is slightly more than half as important than just total strokes gained par 3. So if there is a range, it's 175 to 200, but it makes me think that it's just strokes gained par 3. In the same vein, par 4s, very, very important. Strokes gained, just strokes gained total par 4. You have the two ranges here, the most important being 450 to 500. Yeah, okay. This is a pretty big outlier. That's a pretty big outlier. So it looks like it's just flat out strokes gained par 4. Boring, but that's a really, really high number. And then strokes gained par 5. Par 5's total, again, like we were seeing, looks like it's the 550 to 600. This is a pretty big outlier from 2018. So if there is a range, it's 550 to 600, but it might just be strokes gained par 5. And this is what I was talking about with the proximity. Proximity, this is a pretty high number by proximity standards, almost at a 110. Whereas these here are pretty darn low. These are actually pretty close to average in terms of importance. That number is pretty high for total proximity. And the reason why I'm able to say that, as I scroll over quickly, this is the course evaluation. So the Valero strokes gained off the tee is about 17% more important than the average tour course, 5% approach. It says around the green is 20% more important here than the average tour course, but again, I just don't see much of a correlation, especially since that's such a high outlier. Let's see, other things that we can kind of focus on. Green's more important here, good drive's more important. Again, this is speaking to the lack of importance at driving distance. Driving distance is 40.5% less important here in terms of high leaderboard success than other tour events. It is what it is. Let's see. The links to the par 3s, you've got 5% more important than the 175 to 200, although par 3s are a whole lot less important here, it says. Par 4s, very important. 450 to 500 is the most important in relation to the tour average tour event. Par 5s, 550 to 600. Okay. Proximity total, very important. So just wanted to give you all a look at some of the math nerds behind the scenes spreadsheet stuff and what I think is going to be most important here at TPC San Antonio. Mostly it just comes to this. The higher the number, the more important it is of a factor in terms of high leaderboard success. And again, if you are a masochist, 1, or 2, sincerely interested, give a like on the video or comment below. I'll be more than happy to do a live show or a video explaining what the details of these numbers are. But with that out of the way, let's go back to the past performance, specifically here to TPC San Antonio. We're going to try to wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes or so. But player, number of times they've played the event, their average finish, their missed cut. Now that we have a few statistics that we think are going to be the most important to focus on this week, let's start looking at some of those. So let's first start by off the tee. We saw that was a very important factor here at TPC San Antonio. So your leaders in strokes gained off the tee from past years, specifically here at TPC San Antonio, you got Brandon Grace. Grayson Siggs only played it one time. Corey Connors, Abraham Answer, Charlie Hoffman, Ricky Fowler, Cameron Champ. Matt Wallace and Gary Woodland both performed very well, but they only did it in one tournament. Take it with a little bit of grain of salt. Siwoo Kim, Kevin Streelman, Dylan Fratelli, 2 for 2. So good stuff there. It's surprising to see Ryan Palmer. He's only 2 for 4. He is a Texas native. Generally plays well in the wind. It's surprising to see him not have a lot of success here. Same with Luke List. Luke List popped on a whole lot of the filters that we applied, yet he is only 1 for 4 at this event with an average finish of 82nd. Not good. So, interesting to see. I'm absolutely going to look at strokes gained approach. Approach, largest to smallest. Scroll over again for you all. All right. So, again, Wallace Kazire, they've only played it once. Aaron Baddeley. I mentioned how he has played this event very well. All very high in strokes gained approach. Corey Connors. Snedeker. Chappell, 2 for 3. Lucas Glover, Jordan Spieth, your defending champ. Tony Finau, 2 for 3. KH Lee, 2 for 2. Matt Kuchar, who's fallen off a cliff, so I don't know how much this is really going to play, but he is 4 for 4 here. Charlie Hoffman, 4 for 4. Struman, 3 for 3. Martin Laird, 4 for 4. All right, good stuff. Let's get into some very, very specific stuff here. Let's look at birdies gained. Birdies gained, largest to smallest. Birdies. All right. Oh, look at that. Corey Connors has played it 3 times and has gained a whole, birdies gained is bunches. So, very good there. Also, positive in bogeys avoided, but not by much. So, he has definitely been more apropos on the gaining the birdies as opposed to avoiding the bogeys. Jordan Spieth, more of the same, although he's better at avoiding bogeys than Connors. Villegas, Aaron Baddeley again. Kevin Chappell, Jimmy Walker, 4 for 4. There's Finau again. Kevin Struman. Ryan Palmer again. Boy, for only being 2 for 4, he's high up there in the approaches. He's high up there in the birdies gained and avoiding the bogeys. So he's got to have some shit stats somewhere. Shoot, I didn't mean to go that far. KH Lee, 2 for 2. Trey Mellanax, 2 for 3. There's Hoffman. There's Laird. Let's do a couple more here because we're running a little bit over on time. We're going to look at, let's do par 4s. They were so darn very important. And again, jump in chat if you want to see something very, very quickly before we sign off. I have about a couple of more minutes here. The strokes gained par 4. Woodland, Blixt, Wallace, again, all 3 of those have only played it 1 time, so don't discount it, but it's certainly less reliable than, say, Aaron Baddeley, who's 3 for 3, Streelman, who's played it 3 times, Jimmy Walker, who's played it 4 times, Connors, Hoffman. So here's a lot of the guys that are have played it often and have really taken advantage of the par 4s here. Siwoo. Chris Kirk's only 2 for 4, but the two cuts made were top 10s. Martin Laird down here. Landry, a former champ, but the one time he didn't, or the times that he did not win, he missed the cut. So interesting to see. And then finally, let's look at proximity. Proximity, total, largest, smallest. And I think I need to scroll over a little bit. Yeah, I'll just bring it up there. Lucas Glover, Patton Gazzara is only 1 time. Chris Kirk, 2 for 4. Kyle Stanley, 2 for 2. Leviota, 1 for 2. Connors again. Kuchar again. Villegas, 2 for 2. Chappell, Ryan Stewart, Kevin Streelman again. KH Lee, Sam Ryder, Sam Saunders, Graham McDowell, 4 for 4. Martin Laird, 4 for 4. So I'm going to sort this again by average finish for you all as we prep to end the show. I want finish this time, smallest to largest. I think that did it. Hey. So, guys, thanks again for tuning in. Hopefully I gave you some good data to use in your research leading up to any wagers that you make, your DFS lineups that you're considering. So leave a like on the video and leave comments below if you want to see some explanation behind the new or improved, updated comparison course spreadsheet. Let me know who you're thinking about wagering, or any of your early leans or fades or whatnot. I'd be interested to hear from you all. And then I'm going to do my best to pose a question or two, or have something to think about. Specifically, like, what is there a proximity do you think plays the most here? Do you think it's greens and regulation, good drives? Is putting a lot more important than I'm giving it credence to? So be on the lookout for that. Thanks again for tuning in for all of the wagers that you have made so far this week at the Valero, for any of the wagers that you're thinking about making at the Valero. And until I see you Wednesday night as we prepare our lineups and strategies for DFS, may all your bets be profitable.